Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I am your host, Brennan Tassif. It is Tuesday night, recording this for Wednesday's release. Just kind of hanging out at the house. Didn't really do very much today. Recorded Cheers from the Press Box, my sports podcast with the very talented Joe Dorville. Did that yesterday. Watched a little bit of football. Feel kind of like a fraud because I record a sports podcast because I love sports, but I work doubles on Sundays at the restaurant, so I don't really get to watch too much of it. So it's weird to record a podcast basically going off of highlights on ESPN.com and then looking up stats. You know, I played football for a long time. How hard can it really be? It's not that difficult to talk about it. I hope everyone has a great week this week. I hope everyone's week is going well so far. Still trying to get my bearings on the podcast thing. Still trying to figure out how to get this going. I was supposed to have a guest on today. I was supposed to have Marcus Crespo with us. We're going to tell some drinking stories, and he's got a couple funny stories about getting messed up on edibles, which he'll share with us next week. Couldn't do it this week, though. I thought it'd be easy to do the dual microphone thing. Apparently, this stuff's a lot harder than I had assumed. So it's weird, because growing up, I'm 32, so I'm of that age where growing up, my parents made me do all the technical stuff in the house. And I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who are like this. So I was young enough to understand how, like, to hook up the DVD player or the VHS player or the cable box, stuff like that, like the hardwire stuff. But I'm old enough to where some of this other shit gets confusing, like coding and input outputs on computers and microphones and mixers and all that kind of stuff. So I had 2 microphones and I had the ports for them. So I figured, how hard could it be just to hook up both microphones? And apparently it's very difficult. It's a lot harder than I thought it would be. I didn't have the right mixers, and then I use a program on my laptop to record the audio. But if I want to record the audio for 2 microphones, I need to like plug them into the same port, and then it was incredibly frustrating. So then I went on Amazon. I watched a couple YouTube videos on how to do it, and there was one really good one. I wish I remembered the name, but I don't have it. But then I went on Amazon and just looked it up, all the equipment that they had talked about, and I got everything that I needed. But then I ended up dropping about $400 on everything. And I even applied for the Amazon card because I could save a bunch of money, but I didn't get it. So much for rebuilding my credit. But anyway, so coming up probably next week or the week after, we're going to start having guests. Sound quality is going to be a lot better too, hopefully, if all this stuff works as well as they say it does. I'm still trying to figure out how to mix it. You guys are with me on an adventure. I'm doing this all freelance. I'm doing this all just by the seat of my pants. I don't know how to really work the audio program yet. I'm still trying to figure out how to blend and mix and everything like that. So I know it's kind of echoey and the sound quality is not great, but we're going to get there. The only reason I'm really recording these podcasts just by myself is, like I said last week, because I talk to myself a lot, so I figured I might as well just record it. But also because this is good practice for me. So eventually, when my girlfriend and I do get up to New York City and I start doing comedy and people ask about the podcast, by then it should be a well-oiled machine. The only way I can get better at it is by doing it. You know, I'm not going to get better by thinking about it or watching YouTube videos about it or talking about it. Gotta be about it, baby. Gotta be about it. Don't talk about it, be about it. So yeah, the equipment's on the way. Like I said, should be enough equipment. I've got cords and mics and cables and mixers and everything like that on the way. So hopefully by next week it'll all be here. I'll figure out how to sync everything up and then could start having some guests on. You know, we call it Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy because I wanted to have some of my buddies on to talk about their old drinking stories and party stories and stuff, but it doesn't really work when I'm just talking about my stories. Especially because as interesting as my stories are to me, I don't know if they're really that interesting to everybody else. Plus, it's a good marketing tool to have other people on. I've been promoting a lot of my sports podcast. I feel like I'm just spamming people. And by I feel like, I mean my girlfriend is telling me I'm just spamming people when I post about it. So I've gotten some listens though. That's cool. It's really weird to hear yourself on a podcast because anyone can set it up and just send it out to Apple. There's a very, very funny comic in Jacksonville named Daisy Tackett. And I was telling her I was so excited because I was like, yeah, I finally set everything up and I got the RSS feed and I got the podcast going. And as soon as I said it to her, her face kind of changed and she looked right at me and she goes, "Don't tell anybody else you're doing that." And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Everyone has a podcast. It's so annoying. Don't tell anybody about it." So that's why these first few aren't going to get a whole lot of listens because I'm not really promoting this one. These first few episodes are going to be like little hidden gems. If anything ever happens in my comedy career where people can go back and look at them or listen to them. But yeah, she was right. I want to get her on the show though because she's got some funny stories. She was a Division I athlete as well. So I want to get her on the show. I want to talk to her about some of those stories. Hopefully she'll do it though. She seemed kind of adverse to the idea, but I'm hoping I can talk her into it. Had a weird week so far. I still work those 2 restaurant jobs because comedy's dead right now, but I'm starting to get back there. But it's not paying enough for me to not work a normal job. And that's bizarre. I like working in restaurants though, because even though I went to college and everything, but I could never work in an office. Anybody who works in an office, my hat's off to you. I did it for 3 months. I had gained about 30 pounds in 3 months. And it was just driving me insane. Because they say 9 to 5. But then when I got hired and everything was done, they're like, well, it's more like 8 to 6. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And they go, well, we're going to pay you for 40 hours a week. But you get like an hour lunch break. You can take a 15-minute break like every 3 hours. So really, if you want to get your full 8 hours, you got to be here around 8:15. Then you got to stay till about 6. And I was like, oh, well, what if I just don't take any breaks? And they're like, oh, well, then that's fine. Well, come to find out, they wire your work day around 8 to 6. So where I was, it was kind of like, well, you're still like taking calls at 5:15, 5:30 because they assume you're going to take those breaks during the day. I don't even know if they assume. They just think, well, if you don't take the breaks, you're still going to work till 6. And I couldn't do that. I was like, this is crazy, especially for the money that you make. So I know we talked about it last week about that table that didn't tip. I got stiffed again this past week. And it's so funny when it happens because a lot of times it's tables telling you how awesome you are at, how great of a job you did. And then they don't leave you anything. It's called a verbal tip. It's very common in the restaurant industry. But it's just weird because I can't call my electric company and say, hey, I don't have the money this week, but my table 27 did say I was the best server they ever had. So, how about cutting me a break? Like, it doesn't work like that. But it does happen. It is incredibly frustrating when it happens, but that's just life. The girlfriend's in the other room. She is watching Netflix and reading her book. So I'm trying to be a little quieter. I don't like to yell so much when she's home because it makes me feel awkward. But yeah, comedy's coming back. Did a show on Saturday. So about 4 days ago, which went really well. So I think I mentioned it last week. I did that show in Dayton where I bombed in front of my family. Flew 2 planes there, had a layover in Charlotte in the middle of a pandemic. An American does not care right now about the pandemic. I shouldn't say that. So they've got everyone wearing the masks on the plane, but there is no like every other seat. I talked to my dad, and he said that they flew Delta a few weeks ago, and it's every other seat, and they're real courteous about everything. And I fly, I like to fly on the bigger airlines because I think they're gonna have their stuff together more. I still take Spirit and Frontier and all those like kind of not as awesome ones because they're cheaper, but since I've got miles and everything now, I was like, oh, I'll fly the nicer airline. Well, not even nicer, just the one that I know of more. And it was brutal. So you fly the more well-known airlines because you feel like you get more benefits. There's free Wi-Fi, and then there's drink service, and sometimes there's food service if the flight's long enough, and the planes are nicer because the tickets are more expensive, and that was not the case. So with everything going on, there's no amenities really at all. You do get the Wi-Fi, which is cool, so you get access to the TV and stuff on your phone through them. But other than that, there was no drink service. They were trying to make people check their bags, which is a fee, so that was kind of crazy. But anyway, I was doing newer material this past Saturday. So like I said last week at the show in Dayton, I tried my old set that I'm super comfortable with that I've been doing for years and years because I was like, oh, this is a brand new spot I've never done before. These are all people who've never seen me perform before except my mom, but the last time she saw me, she was drinking with my sister, so I don't even think she remembers my set. So I was like, I'll just do some of this older material that I'm super comfortable with, and we'll see how it goes. And I bombed horrifically. So fast forward a few weeks. Now I'm doing another show in Jacksonville where I live at Veterans United. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to do old material again. Like, I struck out with it a couple weeks ago, so I'm not going to do it again. So I tried a bunch of new stuff, and it actually worked out real well. Some of the jokes people got, and it went over real well. Some of them kind of fell flat, but that's what happens with new things. But all in all, it was a great set. I've been told many times that I'm a little intense on stage, which is understandable. If you know me, you know that I'm pretty intense. And so sometimes it doesn't go so well because the problem is these people don't know you. They don't know your personality. They don't know kind of your sense of humor. And so then when you get up there and try and do it, you'll talk about things that you think are funny. And a lot of times you'll get I get, because I'm not a very great comic, I'm not a very good comic, a lot of times I get these blank stares of people kind of being like nervous that I'm going to, massacre the whole room or something. Not with jokes, like literally massacre the whole room. But it actually went real well. So that's good. The problem with the whole COVID thing right now, there's a ton of problems, but the one thing I've noticed is that our shows are few and far between now because it's a lot of outdoor venues or socially distant venues, and a lot of the bars and stuff we used to perform at just aren't open right now. So we're having trouble actually finding venues to perform. And when we find venues, a lot of times they'll book a lot of the local comics on it, but then you're not going to get booked again the next week. So it turns into this game where you're doing like one show every like 3 weeks. So before we were doing 3 or 4 shows a week, and a lot of it was open mics and stuff, but it's a great way to test out new material and things like that. And now it's transformed into this weird one show every 3 weeks. So, I record every set, but it's one of those things where even if you record every set and listen back to it, it's going to be different people, a different crowd. It's a lot harder to get the flow of jokes too. Because a lot of times I'll try jokes 3 or 4 times before I'm actually we'll work it into a set list for a showcase or a show that I'm headlining or something like that. And you just can't do that right now. You kind of just have to trust the once or twice that you've done it. I'm sure that'll start to ease up soon. I'm in Florida, so Ron DeSantis is kind of playing it fast and loose. He opened everything up. Was that like 3 months ago? It was like 3 months. Yeah, it's been about 6 months. So it was 3 months into the pandemic, he reopened everything, and then we got a massive influx of positive cases. So then he shut everything back down. But I remember when he first reopened everything for about a week or two, like a bunch of bars had reopened, comedy had started back up, and then boom, it was all shut down again. So who knows? I don't know. I don't want to get too political, but it's just one of those things where I'm sure after the election, we'll start to kind of figure out what's going on. I don't know, though. I hear people saying it's a big conspiracy, which is frustrating to me because it's like the whole world shut down. You know, the whole world isn't in on this conspiracy. Like, it's not a big conspiracy to burn Donald Trump. It doesn't make any sense. Why would the whole world care about that? I mean, I guess they would for specific reasons, but I don't think they care enough to all band together for a giant underground conspiracy. My favorite thing, though, to be honest with you, my favorite thing is when a person that gets it, they go back into like their social media feeds and it says how it's a hoax and it's a big lie and that, you know, it's created by the Dems to try and, you know, thwart Donald Trump, and then they get it and they end up in the hospital. That's like my favorite thing. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but that is kind of like my favorite thing in the whole wide world. Anyway, let's get off that kind of stuff. Let's not talk about that stuff. I had a weird thing happen to me at the gym today. I do go to the gym a lot, and I don't know why. I do know why. It's because of the way I look, but I'm always perceived as like this bro-heem, like this super bro guy. So I was there, and I was talking to a friend of, I wouldn't even call him a friend. I was talking to this guy that I know. I wouldn't say we're workout buddies, but we kind of, you know, we go around the same time every day. So we always see each other and say hey and stuff. And I don't understand why, but he always wants to bro down with me. Like, he always wants to be like, oh man, check that chick out. She's so hot, blah, blah, blah. And that's incredibly uncomfortable for me. I didn't have a lot of male influences in my life, so I don't really like it when dudes talk like that. It's just like really awkward and weird for me because I grew up with my sisters and my mom for the most part. You know, I spent time at my dad's house too, but him and I didn't really talk too much when I was a kid. So it's a lot of female influences in my life. So when I go to the gym, because, you know, I work out 6 days a week and I'm there all the time. And I think it's because I used to play football that guys think I'm like a bro, like one of those bro guys. So they always want to have these conversations with me. And I don't even know what to say to them. Like, I don't know how to respond. I kind of just do that weird thing where I like kind of awkwardly smile and walk away. Because I don't know what to say. I mean, I guess what I really should do is I should say something like, hey, that's not cool, or dude, I don't want to talk about that kind of stuff, or I'm just here to work out. But I'm such an awkward person that I don't do that. I just kind of go, yeah, and I walk away. Because I don't want to hear, especially when you post all these pictures on social media of you with your girlfriend, and then every time I see you at the gym, you're talking about wanting to have sex with every girl that you see. Like, that's just weird, man. That's awkward. This isn't the first time this happens to me constantly. I went to a private gym during the quarantine because every other gym was shut down. So I found this private gym where this guy, the owner, was like, I'm not shutting down. Like, I built this entire gym from scratch, like with my life savings. I'm not shutting down and losing my business. Which, I mean, you know, more power to him. If you're following all the protocols and trying to keep everyone safe, do what you want, I guess. And I didn't want to, you know, stop working out because I have super duper body issues like most people. So I started going to his gym. And every day it was the same thing. Like, I go in, I put my hood up on my hoodie, and I put my headphones in because I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm not approachable. I don't want to be approachable in life. Just leave me alone. And so that's how I go into the gym. But every time he'd like wave me over to like chit chat. And it was always about, you know, the hottest girls in the classes. And, oh my God, I was with this bitch last night. And I'm like, dude, like, inappropriate gym place topic. I don't understand where that mentality comes from. I don't know if it's because I grew up in locker. It's like people can't say it's locker room talk because I grew up in locker rooms. Maybe it is, and I just never associated with those people, or really just didn't talk to them very often, or I guess I just really didn't talk about that kind of stuff. Because whenever people say stuff like that, I always just think of like, what if like my sisters walked into the gym and people talked about them like that? Like, plus, it doesn't matter if you have sisters or a wife or a mom. Well, like, that doesn't matter. Like, you shouldn't talk about another human being like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm not trying to be all super duper woke because I am not at all. In fact, I get in trouble all the time because I think I'm woke enough to say certain things and I'm definitely not. I get in trouble a lot because I talk to people like I talk to people, not in a rude way, but like if I think something's funny, I say it. And then a lot of times people are like, you're not allowed to say that. And I'm always like, but it's funny. And they go, yeah, but it's inappropriate or it's offensive. And I'm always just like, yeah, but it's funny. And it's weird. The people who get, I know this has been beaten into the ground, but the people who get the most mad are never the people that I'm talking to about a specific thing. It's always people around us that hear me. Like I've got a good friend of mine, Will Blaylock. He's a comedian in Jacksonville, and he's a black dude. And a lot of times if I have a joke that has to deal with race, I'll run it by him. Just to make sure, like, because I genuinely don't want to offend anybody. When I get on stage, just to try and make people laugh. And even if it's to laugh at uncomfortable things, it's to make people laugh. That's why I talk about a lot of the stories in my past about my masochism and hurting myself and self-mutilation and going to rehab. I talk about all that stuff because I'm trying to show people that there's humor in it. And all these bad things happened to me and I did all these bad things to myself, but we can laugh about it. And that's my whole intention. Is to make people laugh at, things that may be perceived as traumatic or uncomfortable. So sometimes if I have a joke and race is involved in the joke, I'll run it by him. And every single time up to this point, he's always like, no, man, that's good. Like sometimes, most of the time he won't say it's funny because I'm not a very good comedian, but he'll at least be like, no, you can definitely say that. And then I'll say it on stage. And certain demographics in the room laugh at it. And then there's other ones who don't laugh. And then there's a lot of times people who come up to me after the show and they'll say, you can't say that. You're not allowed to say that. That's racist or that's sexist or that's homophobic or whatever. And they're always the people that it has nothing to do with the joke. Like, it's not them that would even be the people who were, quote unquote, attacked in the bit. It's not them at all, but for some reason they feel like they have to take it on. Like my twin sister's this way. She is like my joke police. Like she comes up to me, if I put something online or something like that, or if I'm just like joking around with her when I'm coming to visit, she'll be like, that's, even if that's funny, you can't say that on stage. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Yes, I can. She's like, oh, no, that's offensive, or that's inappropriate or something like that. And I'm like, who are you? Like my twin sister used to be the most like the most offensive. God, I can't believe I couldn't find that word. She used to be like the most offensive person I knew. And now like she gets so angry about that kind of stuff. And I think it's because she lives in this echo chamber. And I've told this to her, so if she hears this, she'll already know. But it's this weird echo chamber when you kind of find your circles. And I'm guilty of it too, because I live in an echo chamber, but it's an echo chamber of a lot of comics and people like that. So we're always, we don't really get offended, but it's one of those weird things where, I mean, it happens to me. Like there's certain things that people will say around me and I'm kind of like, well, I don't agree with that, but I don't say anything. I just keep it to myself. But I think she's in this situation, which happens to a lot of people, where a lot of your Facebook friends and the people you follow on social media and the people you interact with on a daily basis are people you agree with and you get along with for the most part. And if you don't, then you block them or you mute them or, you just unfriend them. So it becomes the situation where everything you're seeing is agreeing with you and your beliefs. And then all of a sudden it turns into the situation where obviously you would feel right. Obviously you'd feel 100% empowered because everything you see is basically saying, yeah, you are right. You are empowered. People shouldn't say stuff like that, or people shouldn't do those kind of things. So then all of a sudden when somebody does something that you find offensive or unwarranted, you're like, no, you're not allowed to do that. You can't do that. And I think that happens to a lot of people, to be honest with you, because I've been in situations where people are in this kind of weird bubble where nothing offends them, like I said, with like comics and stuff like that. So then they'll just say the most heinous things, and most of the time they say it as a joke. I mean, I think every time they say it as a joke, but they say these things because they think like, oh, we'll get a laugh out of it. And most of the time it is funny, but there are certain things that they'll say, and I'm kind of like, I don't even know. I wouldn't even say that kind of stuff, and I'm the most like, I don't give a shit kind of comic, but I wouldn't even say that kind of stuff. That's not true. I shouldn't say I'm one of those comics who just doesn't care about what I say, because I don't talk about sex on stage. I try not to curse so much on stage. And it's just weird because it's not out of a need to be clean, I don't think. It's more out of this weird, like, I want my, uncle or my grandma or my dad or someone to listen to my set and I'd be like, oh, that's aggressive. Plus, I'm a real big believer in not going after the low-hanging fruit, which sucks because there's so many times where I get on stage and I'm like, oh, if I just told this story about the one time I got caught masturbating when I was 15, I could get this whole room on my side and laughing for the most part. But I don't do it. Like, I don't want to do it because it seems so obvious. I don't like going for the obvious joke. But the problem with that is, obviously, I just said obvious a lot. But the problem with that is if you don't do that, then a lot of times your stories or jokes or whatever can go over somebody's head, and they'll go over the whole room's head sometimes, which has happened quite a bit. I've definitely done that. Like I said, when I did that show in Dayton, my brother, who's a very intelligent guy, went to Cornell for his PhD and everything, he was the only one laughing at a lot of my bits, which to me is fine because that's the kind of person I would want to laugh at my bits, an intelligent person with, an open mind who's very kind of understanding of the world around him. That's kind of where I would like my jokes to land. But then at the same time, you feel like garbage when you're looking out onto this crowd and there's one person dying laughing and everyone else is kind of just staring at you. That's not a fun feeling either. That's the other thing about all these shows being so spaced out and so far away. When you bomb, like I did a few weeks ago, I guess a month ago now, it sits with you for the longest time. Like before, I could literally bomb at a show early in the night and then go out to do another show and everything, do well, and then boom, you forget about it. Or the reverse, you do well at a show at the beginning of the night, and then you go out and maybe you bomb at a different one, but then you have 2 shows the next day, or 3 shows coming up that weekend. So you don't even it doesn't even stick with you. You just keep moving forward. But now with COVID and a lot of these venues being closed down for a while, you're just kind of stuck in it. You just kind of have to sit in it. And that is not fun at all. I did want to talk to you guys about some other stuff. You can always email me, BrennanTassif@BrennanTComedy.com. Check out the website. I worked real hard on it. Not too hard. I worked a little bit hard on it. But yeah, email me in if you want to tell me about your drinking stories. Do have that one interesting story. I touched on it last week about spending $26,000 in 28 days. I guess I'll tell that story in actual detail now to kind of close out the podcast. And like I said, we're going to try and run these about an hour and a half once I start getting guests in here and stuff. And I just want to get more comfortable with the audience. And once I kind of feel you guys out and see where you're at, we're gonna keep moving forward. Like I said, these are going to be kind of the bonus episodes, the undiscovered episodes, because no one's going to listen to these first few until I start getting guests on and things like that. But yeah, so I was in South Florida, like we talked about last time. I got my first DUI when I was 21, and from then on, I was riding a bike everywhere. and I was going to school at FAU, go Owls. Oh, and I lived like 6 miles away from campus, so I just bike in. And this is at the time is when I discovered the After Disaster, which is a really good podcast. So I would listen to them as I biked in, and they're actually still around, which is crazy. Shouts out to Anderson Cowan, Mike Carano, and Tyler White, Ty Heads. But I was biking, and I would bike on the sidewalk because there's a lot of transplants from up north, like New York and New Jersey and stuff in South Florida, and they do not care when they're driving. They kind of drive like it's your responsibility to look for us because you're a pedestrian or you're on a bicycle and you could die. We'll be fine. So I would tend to drive on the sidewalk just to make things a little safer. And I know that's not technically the legal thing to do on a bicycle. You're supposed to drive in the street. You're supposed to, you're considered a moving motorized vehicle. But I was on the sidewalk and I stopped, waiting for the light to turn, the little crosswalk guy. So then the light turns green, crosswalk guy says go. So I start pedaling across the crosswalk, and this guy comes whipping around the corner about 20 miles an hour to make a right turn. Doesn't see me going through the crosswalk and just nailed me. And I'm on my bicycle, so I flew up onto his hood, and I was kind of like, I was in pain, but after, I played football for so long, my adrenaline kind of kicked in, and my reaction was like, just get up. Like, what the coaches always would say to you when you get hit real hard, just get up. So I was kind of trying to get back up, and I tell a condensed version of the story on stage, but it's true. What happened next was people just started honking and yelling at me to get out of the road, even though I was just hit by a car. So I kind of get up. The guy doesn't even get out of his car. He's just kind of staring at me. So I kind of get up and I put my bike to the side of the road, and I kind of walked back around to him, and I was like, what was that? And I felt my heart ached when the guy rolled down his window. It was like an 82-year-old guy. I felt so bad for him because he looked terrified. He looked so scared about what had just happened. And I was like, well, I need your information. And so he just pulled out his license, and I took a picture of it with my camera phone. And then this pedestrian from across the street came running over and was like, hey, I saw the whole thing. Are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I think I'm okay. I'm not sure though. And so he gave me his number, and he's like, if you need me to be a witness, I'll be a witness. That's crazy. That guy didn't even look when he made that right turn. I'll be a witness. And I was like, all right, well, thanks, man. And then everything just kind of continued on. But then I was trying to walk back to my bike, and my back was kind of like twinged, and I was like, oh, what's going on? And my left knee where I got hit was starting to hurt, and then my head was starting to hurt as the adrenaline was wearing off, and I was like, oh no, like this might actually be bad, and I don't know if I still have health insurance. So I called one of my roommates. He took me to the hospital. X-rays came back negative, but the doctors were like, oh no, you probably have, at least a strain on your knee joint. I think it was the doctor had said like my ACL or my MCL. And they're like, we don't know what's going on with your back. Nothing's broken, but we can't really look at your spine with x-rays. You have to get an MRI for that kind of stuff. So I was like, oh no. So I called my roommates. They came and got me and took me home, and I took the night off from work. And I was talking to a buddy of mine from college, and he goes, well, my stepdad got into an accident a few months ago. He got rear-ended by somebody. So his buddy's a lawyer. So I'm going to give you his number. I was like, okay, that seems fair, just because I don't know what the medical bills are going to be and stuff. So just in case. And this dude was the shadiest, something out of the movie, like something out of a Scorsese movie with De Niro. I called him, left a message. He showed up I left a message and said, hey, my name is Brennan. I live in Deerfield Beach. I'm friends with, and I mentioned my buddy's name. This dude showed up to my house like an hour and a half later. I can't remember if he called or not before. I think he might have gotten my address from my buddy, but showed up like slick back, greasy hair, like super Italian, like, hey, how you doing today? My name's Danny. We're going to handle this whole situation for you. Don't even worry about it. He's like, you're not going to talk to the cops. You're not going to talk to the insurance companies. If your mom calls to ask you what happened, you don't even talk to her about it. You talk to me, and I talk to everybody. Okay, you got it? And I was like, all right, man, cool. He goes, we just want you to focus on getting better. You just need to try to get better. So I called work, told him I wasn't going to be able to work for a while. So he said, I mean, to their credit, they set up the MRI and the the MRI and the physical therapy and all that kind of stuff. They set it up within like a day. So I was just going, like they had set up transport for me because I wasn't driving, obviously, because of the DUI, and I couldn't really do very much. So I got the MRI. Apparently, I had a real messed up back. I had a partial tear on my MCL, and then I had a pretty bad concussion from the accident, which I could tell because I'd gotten concussed a lot in football. So I could tell that I had a concussion. So then they sent me a letter saying, or not a letter, they called me. This is months later now. They'd called me and they said, hey, so the insurance company wants to settle out of court. And I said, okay, what does that mean? They go, well, they want to settle for $3,000. And I was like, my one MRI was $4,000. And they're like, yeah, this is how they're going to do it, is they're going to try and lowball you to see what they can get away with. And they were like, well, we can't tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but what we can't, as your lawyer, I can advise you to not take this deal, but I can't tell you what to do. So I said no. And this went back and forth for like 2 years. And then finally, about a year and a half, maybe 2 years later, at this point, I'm done with school. I'm living back in Palm Coast, I think at the time, at my mom's house. No, I had just left Palm Coast. So I moved, when I finished school, I moved back in with my mom. I was there for like 2 months, and I was drinking too much, and I just, we'll get into that kind of stuff later, but I was drinking a lot at the time because I wasn't, in school anymore, and I wasn't playing football, and I was working in a restaurant, so I was just getting drunk every single day. And so they had called me. So I couldn't stay with my mom very much because she was getting sick of it, and I didn't want to be there. So then I moved to Daytona, and I was staying with a friend of mine on a blow-up chair, not even a blow-up mattress. It was a blow-up chair. I wasn't really working, and I was just kind of living by the seat of my pants. Anyway, I got a call from my mom, and she said, hey, we got a No. Before that, I got a call from my lawyer, and they said, hey, listen, now they want to settle. And so it's gone back and forth. It was like $3,000, then $8,000, then $10,000. Then they called me, and they were like, hey, a year and a half later, they want to settle. They're willing to settle for $45,000. And I said, well, what does that mean? And they said, well, after all the dust settles, you'll probably get a check for around $30,000. They'll cover all the medical. That doesn't include the medical. They'll cover all that too. But this is their final offer, they said. They said, if you don't take this, then we're going to go to trial. And the problem, or not the problem, but the way that can be messed up is my lawyer told me that they've gone to trial before, and the jury thought they were helping this lady out and settled on like $10,000 when the insurance company had already offered her like $100,000. But once you go to trial, like that's it. Like you have to take the judgment. So he was like, you're a young guy. You're a relatively healthy guy. You played college football. So they're going to say that that's where your injuries are from, not from the accident. He goes, you could go to trial and get nothing. You could go to trial and get $10,000. You could go to trial and get $1 million. Like it's really not, we really cannot say. So at least if you don't go to trial and you take the settlement, you'll get the guaranteed money. Like you'll get this because that's what they're settling on. And my first thought was like, okay, that's fine. But then now years later, the more I think about it, I'm kind of like, well, my back is still messed up to this day. Like, and that's from that accident. Like I didn't have back problems like this when I was playing football or anything. Like that's from that accident. And it's just one of those things where I wonder if I would have gone to trial, if I would have gotten more, but works out the way it works out. So then we settle. Now, fast forward back again. I'm living in Daytona at a friend's house, and I get a call from my mom, and she's like, hey, I have a certified check here for you. I have a certified letter from your law firm. I think it's your check. She called me on a Saturday, and I said, you need to bring that to me right now. And it was a Saturday. And I had arranged, because I knew I was getting the settlement check, I had arranged to move into an apartment. It's like a 3-bedroom apartment in downtown Daytona where it's all businesses. There are no apartments, but these people that a friend of a friend owned a business, and above the business was a 3-bedroom apartment. So I had made arrangements as soon as I got my check to move in there. So That Saturday, I called them and I said, hey, I'm going to meet you at the apartment to get the keys. My mom's going to bring me my check. We're going to get this all squared away. And they were like, okay, that's fine. So I met my mom outside of the apartment downtown Daytona, and she showed up. I even told her, I was like, I'll give you $100 if you bring that check to me right now, because it's like a 30-minute drive from where she was. So she drove down and brought it to me, brought me some of my furniture and stuff in the truck because I had just gotten this new apartment. And my landlady was there, and she gave me the keys, and she's just like, yeah, next week after you cash the check, just bring us the rent. And the smartest thing I did was I paid them for 6 months of rent all up front. I was just like, they were like, oh, it's going to be $1,000 a month. And I was like, oh, I'll just give you the $6,000. I think I gave them $4,000. I think I paid them for 4 months rent. And they were like, okay, that's fine. You won't have to pay a deposit if you just give it to us all up front. And I was like, all right, cool. So, that Saturday I moved into that apartment. My mom brought me the check, and then she left. And I thought, like, well, you can't use that money when it's just as a check. So what I did was I, took the VOTRAN, which is the Volusia County Transportation. It's the bus. I took a city bus with a check it ended up being $26,000 and change. I took the city bus to an Amscot, which is like a check and go, a check cashing place. I took a $26,000 check in my pocket on a city bus to an Amscot. And I got there and I just slammed it down on the table and I said, let me get my money. I'm rich. And the lady kind of looked at me crazy, but then she saw that I was serious and she was like, well, we can't cash this here. Like, we don't have this kind of money just laying around. This isn't a Federal Reserve. This isn't a bank. She goes, so we keep the max of money we can give to one person is $3,000. And then we take a percentage of the check itself when it's this big. So it ended up, I got 19 money orders. They gave me $3,000 and then they kept $2,600 because they took like 10% of the check. But I didn't care. I just wanted the money because, I'm drinking and doing drugs and stuff at the time. So I was just like, just give me the money. So then that happened. And then I called a cab service because this was before Uber and Lyft. So I called it, this is almost 10 years ago. This is 8 years ago now. So I called a cab service and the driver picked me up. His name was Dane and he looked like a chubbier version of Tormund Giantsbane from Game of Thrones, the red-haired guy. Just like a chubbier version of that. And I said, hey, Dane, how about this? How much money do you make in a day? And he said, around $100, $200. And I said, well, how about I give you $300 and you just hang out with me all day? And at this point, it's like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night. And he's like, yeah, man, hell yeah, let's do that. So now I've got the $3,000 in my pocket and then all these money orders. So then I went to Walmart, spent like $2,500 at Walmart on TVs and Xboxes and like little bits of furniture, like a nightstand and all this kind of stuff. Then we stopped at the liquor store on the way home. I bought a bunch of booze. And I remember I was working at this time now. I was working for a friend of mine, the friend of the friend who got me the apartment. I was working for him. And it was a Saturday, so I still had all day Sunday. So then I got home and I just started drinking, and then I was hanging out with Dane, and then I think we went to like a strip club or something that night. And I've basically run through almost all of this $3,000 in cash that I had. So Sunday rolls around and I've still got, $20,000 in money orders, $19,000 in money orders. So I'm like, I'm not going to work. I don't have to go to work ever again. So this is day 2 and I'm already like $3,000 down. And then Monday came around and my boss came to pick me up and I just didn't answer the door. Like, I didn't answer his text. I didn't answer the door when he got there. He knew the owners, obviously, of the apartment. So he just went downstairs and had them open the door and then came in. And I was like super hungover, passed out in my bed. And he's like, what are you doing, man? Like, it's time to go to work. And I was like, nah, man, I'm not going. He's like, what do you mean you're not going? I was like, I'm done. I'm not going. And he goes, what are you talking about? And I was like, nah, I think I'm just done. And he was kind of pissed off and he was just like, all right, man, whatever. And he left. And then that day was a Monday. So then I went to the bank and I deposited the rest of the money orders into the bank. But then they gave me this BS about like, oh, well, it's going to take 2 or 3 days to process. And I was like, well, they're money orders. Like, can't I have it now? Like, a money order is as good as cash. And they're like, no, it doesn't work that way because of the amount. We're going to have to wait. So I took 2 of the money orders and went back to Amscot, and I was like, hey, can I exchange these for cash since they're Amscot money orders? And they did, but again, had to pay 10% of those out. But then I had enough cash to last me the next couple of days while the other stuff processed. And then I would just go to the strip club every like couple of days. I'd go there. I'd change out like $500 in cash, and I would just throw it up in the air and like, almost to announce I'd arrived. I remember one of the Sundays I went to the Oyster Pub bar on Seabreeze, and a friend of mine that I played with in college, Alfred Morris, was playing for the Redskins. It was the Washington football team. It was his first game. He was a rookie running back drafted in the 6th round. And I remember yelling to the whole bar, if he scores a touchdown, I'm going to buy a shot for everybody. And he scored a touchdown, and I got the tab, and it was like $927. And I was just doing stuff like that. So the money literally lasted me 28 days. And then at the end, I remember because I had paid my cell phone bill and I had paid a couple bills. And then the next month, when I went to pay my cell phone bill again, I checked my bank account and it was negative. And I just remember being like, how is that possible? How did I spend $26,000 in under a month? But I mean, it's crazy how addiction can take you kind of down that road. I couldn't stop drinking. I was drinking like every day, and I just couldn't slow down, and it was nuts. And that's not even when I went to rehab. That amount of money in that short amount of time was not even what drove me to rehab. So I'd only been in that apartment for a month, and then I was like, I can't be in Daytona anymore. I'd burnt so many bridges, and I had alienated so many people. Cause I was just like, I would like day drink at my apartment all day long. And then I would like go downstairs to the business and like try and like hang out. And the owner of the business whom I was renting the apartment from was like, you can't like just come down here wasted and like just chill with us. Like that's not allowed. And like, I didn't really have a whole lot of friends. I didn't spend any of that money to get my DUI taken care of. So I didn't have any transportation. Like when I ran out of money, I couldn't go anywhere anymore. Unless like I took the bus or something. So I was just kind of stuck. And so I was talking to my cousin who was living in Oklahoma City at the time, and he was doing comedy up there. And he's kind of a laid back kind of guy. He was just like, yeah, why don't you just come up here and live with me? Like me and my girlfriend don't get along too well. Like I'm sleeping in the other room anyway. Like it's not a big deal. Like you can just come. It'd be nice to have someone to hang out with. So I went to talk to my landlord. And I was like, hey, I've only been in this apartment for about a month and a half, about a month. This is like a week or so later. And I was like, yeah, I've only been in this apartment a little over a month, but I'm planning on moving. Like, how about we do this? How about all this furniture and stuff I have in the apartment you can keep, so then you can release it as a fully furnished apartment, keep 1 month of rent as my like deposit or whatever, and then just give me the other like $2,000. And they were like, no, it doesn't work that way. We didn't make you pay a deposit because, you were giving it to us all up front. So how about this? Where are you going? And I said, I'm going to Oklahoma City. They said, how about this? We'll buy you a plane ticket for Oklahoma City. And, we'll pay for the plane ticket. We'll pay for a check bag and everything. And then we'll give you like $200 cash for when you get up there. You can have some spending money. And then it'll just be finished. And I was like, all right, fine, whatever. So I ended up doing that. And then I went up to Oklahoma. And then it was about two or 3 months after I moved up there that I finally went to rehab. But that was a crazy time. It's weird. I don't know if anybody ever goes through life thinking back, like, how did I even get here? Like, I know how I got from like being a kid to here. But if you really think back on like specific dates and times, it's so bizarre because it's like I think about college constantly. Like I lived off campus after my sophomore year. It's like, how did I even have the money to pay rent every month? Like I was so bad. I'm still so bad with money. Like oh my God, it creeps me out to think back on that kind of stuff. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that story. When I tell it on stage, it's much more emphatic. I just don't want to yell because my girlfriend's in the other room, and I know she's listening to me, and I know when I walk out of here, she's going to be like, ugh, what was that? That was such a terrible podcast. Like, is that all you do is talk about, like, yourself? It's like, yeah, well, that's the way it works right now. Bleacher Report has the Baltimore Ravens as the number one team in the NFL. I can't believe that. I do not agree with that. I think the Green Bay Packers should be fourth. Yeah, I do agree with that. That's good. Let's see where the Jags are. You can listen to my sports podcast with Joe Dorville, Cheers from the Press Box, as I've already plugged a bunch of times. I'm just looking through this article by Bleacher Report right now. Jets are the worst team in the NFL, according to them. Panthers, Bengals, Lions, Giants. Look at us getting some respect. I remember when the season started, they had us at 32. The Jacksonville Jaguars. If you don't know, I'm a Jaguars fan. Look at us. We got all the way up to 24th. What the heck? Lost to Tennessee? We barely lost to Tennessee. That's horseshit. I don't believe that at all. Oh, man. What is this? What is this? They have the Washington football team ahead of us. They have the Eagles ahead of us. This is garbage. The Vikings? Ugh. This is terrible. This is terrible. This is just terrible. I don't agree with that at all. Like I said, I'm trying to do like a Bill Burr style where I rant by myself, but it's hard because I don't have a ton of listeners and I don't know what you guys want to hear about. I can tell you war stories about drinking till I'm blue in the face, but I don't know if anybody cares or even wants to hear that kind of stuff. The $26,000 in 28 days, though, is something I say. Like I say a condensed version of that on stage. And people never laugh too much during it, but it's one of those stories where people come up to me after shows and have come up to me at different shows and been like, oh, you never tell that story anymore. I love that story. But it's one of those almost like you just kind of have to listen to it and pay attention to it versus laugh at it, I guess. Which is another problem with some of the comedy that I do. It's not comedy. It's more like a fucking TED Talk. Where it's like, no, just listen, man. Just pay attention, man. The Steelers at 5. I do not agree with that at all. They barely beat Denver. One of the worst teams in the NFL. Green Bay Packers at 4. I do agree with that. Aaron Rodgers is big mad, as they say. Oh, man. Baltimore Ravens, number 1. That's crazy. Anyway. So, this is the podcast. Like I said, new equipment will be here soon. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Email me at brennantassif@brennantcomedy.com if you want me to talk about anything specific or if you want to share a drinking story, I'll read it on the air. The AEW is on the top banner for the CNN Bleacher Report page. That's cool. I just really like that because I know Tony. I said last week, he used to be one of my regulars when I worked at a steakhouse down here in Jacksonville. So that's really cool to see the AEW getting some respect. They're putting some spect on their name. Love that. Love that. Anyway, hopefully we'll have some more interesting stories. And like I said, moving forward, I'm going to get definitely some local Jacksonville comics on here. We're going to use them to fill some content. They'll have some good stories. We'll have them share some stories. If you have any questions for the great and powerful Marcus Crespo, he'll be here next week. Hopefully all my equipment will be here by then. And I don't know. Just let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Brennan T. Comedy on all social media. BrennanTComedy.com. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, these are going to be lost episodes that no one's going to find. I'd be shocked if I had 1 or 2 listens to any of these. And until next week, cheers.